Hello, everyone. Sorry for the slightly late start, but I figured that this would be very much a. I had to put a little bit extra work into the Prezi for this one, but anyway, it's all done, and we're going to have a fun time today. So, without further ado, please welcome the always irascible and nice. Drake the Duelist.
I fear nothing, but that she scares me.
Yeah. And please welcome our resident werewolf.
The current Wolf Lord of the Space Wolves is Logan Grimnar, also known as the Old Wolf. He rules from the Hall of the Great Wolf, together with his Wolf Lords such as Herald Deathwolf, Eagle Ironwolf, and Bjorn Stormwolf.
All I got out of that was wolf, 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 and wolf.
The Space Wolves are incredibly uninspired.
The moon is high in the sky, and the smell of blood is in the air. The hunt begins. For tonight, we prowl. Fear for the wolves are on the hunt.
Alrighty, and welcome our resident cat lady.
Hello, everyone.
Hello there, Mr. Steph.
Hello.
Welcome to the stream.
So, before we get started, we're going to talk about what we watched last night.
Well, not me, because I didn't watch it.
You call that horror? No.
It was only horrifying in the meta sense, in that, oh my god, I can't believe this actually cleared somebody's editing.
I can't believe anyone greenlit this. Oh my god.
Sounds like it horrified you, alright, but not in the sense you were hoping it was.
Okay, so for reference,
Something like that.
Yeah, so for reference, what we watched was the Dracula 2020 BBC Netflix miniseries. The first episode.
Oh, BBC, that explains a bit.
Yeah.
Doctor Who with anything like that, it is truly to be feared.
No, we watched Dracula. So Dracula 2020, the series, at least the first episode, and it was bad. So to summarize, Neph, you know how Neph was reacting in fear? She was into the Bram Stoker's Dracula. She was actually screaming pretty loud, and I'm actually sorry that I didn't record it, but you get it.
Yes.
Well, I wish I could have better seen it, but a D&D campaign started, so...
We do it for your entertainment. That's why we do it.
And so we can bring Dawn closer to the ever-called treasure known as monetization, in which the suffering begins to profit, to which then true rewards start to reap.
It was a blessing of so much stupid.
Yeah, the line within the first 5 minutes is, what did you have sexual intercourse with Dracula? Unironically.
My question is, who even thinks of such a thing?
Yeah, next I'll be asking if you had sex with the rank or progressiveness.
Oh man.
Yeah, and the makeup on Dracula was like
Bad.
It was
pretty
very
bad initially.
inconsistent to the point
Yeah,
where you
very
didn't know which guy was Dracula at the time.
I cannot wait to see this tonight. I'm gonna be there and I'm going to be happy.
No,
Yeah.
you're not. You're going to be just as angry as the rest of us are.
Yeah.
I'm happy in a sense that I get to suffer this. Hey, as long as I'm suffering.
I don't like horror, but I mean, I know what Dracula is, and I know what his supposed weaknesses are, and how you're supposed to deal with vampires in general. But this is not that.
Oh my god, what are his weaknesses? Tell me.
Okay.
Oh yeah, his weaknesses.
They are supposed to turn to dust in sunlight, and yet, nope.
He walks around in broad daylight?
Yes.
Kind of. He at least
Does
like
it feel-
walks. He gets sunlight reflected in his face, and it barely does anything to him.
There's
then-
not even a burn.
Nope.
What about garlic? Has he consumed anything that resembled garlic?
Not that I can tell.
Unless you mean when I told him to suck my dick.
Yeah.
Okay,
Does
does he regularly go to a church and start praying very loudly?
Actually,
in order,
they got
yes
that word.
and no.
Actually, they got that right. And that worked up until one of his revenants, yes, I'm not joking, revenants, invited him inside.
Yeah, they instead of having Dracula create vampires, he basically creates revenants.
That's not how that works. Vampires create vampires.
Yeah.
Not zombies.
And yeah, we're really going to have some fun tonight because this next bit is, especially the ending, I think that people are going to be very angry.
You mean we aren't angry already?
Yeah, because we haven't even mentioned the biggest plot reveal.
Oh my god, tell me.
Okay, the Revenant guy who escapes from Count Dracula and is basically the framing device for the entire story because like 80% of it takes place on a flashback. He's interviewed by two atheist nuns.
What? Wait, what? Wait,
one
of
them is Van Helsing.
Hold on. Let me.
Agatha
nuns?
Van Helsing.
Wait, I'm sorry. They're both nuns and they're an atheist?
At least, I think. I don't think that.
That's erase yourself. Erase these two from life. They cannot exist if this is a possibility.
It's like all this lore about vampires is coming true, but we don't know why.
Even worse, Van Helsing is one of them.
Yeah.
So, is he a crossdresser or is he a woman?
Woman. He's gender bent.
Possibly a woman of color, but I can't tell in that shit lighting.
Yeah.
Let's. I actually got two guests come in. Allow me to bring them in.
Hello, everyone. Sorry I'm late, but I'm here now.
Hello there.
Hello.
You guessed.
Hello, Everwise Alex.
Yes, hello.
And we have another guy coming on.
Hello.
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 Hello there.
I wasn't intending to come on, but you guys started talking about vampires.
Yeah.
And how much they suck.
We're
No, just Dracula, or just like Germanic vampires.
Nice to meet you, Brent.
Nice to meet you. What a great
is-
introduction, am I right?
Yeah.
Yes. And it is the 2020 Dracula mini-series on Netflix that we're watching at the moment.
Okay, well, I haven't seen it, and I do have to get back to work here pretty soon, but I have to do this. So, by the way, this is coming from an autistic guy, so this isn't berating them. So, Dracula, he doesn't go out in sunlight. He prefers to be indoors. He has to count things. One of his weaknesses that not a lot of people talk about is you can throw rice at his feet, and he has to
They haven't used that yet.
Okay, but it is something that Dracula has, and he has very weird proclivities against certain foods. So, like garlic, he just hates garlic for no reason.
I thought the reason he hated garlic was because of its high sulfur content.
He hisses at people.
Sulfur's association with hell.
No, it's for no reason. he hisses at people. This is very strange. And he will not enter your home unless you invite him. He has a lot of social anxiety.
Well, that is
Shoot,
true.
I had more evidence. Those are the ones that immediately come to my mind.
No reflection.
I don't know how that one would correlate.
My reflection.
He always eats exactly the same thing. Eats the same thing for every meal.
Okay, sorry. I left for about.
He goes to bed at the same time every night.
I'm sorry. I just can't. I left like 30
I think you mean
seconds.
every morning.
What are the weaknesses again?
Okay, so the biggest one is that he has to count things. So one of the weaknesses people don't talk a lot about is Germanic vampires, Dracula. When you throw rice at his feet, he has to count every grain of rice.
What?
Yes.
They shot random numbers.
That's like one of the things that Van Helsing used against him is he would carry around. I can't remember if it was like rice or sand or pebbles, but he would carry those and he'd throw them in front of Dracula and he'd have to stop.
And count every single one.
Yes, every single one.
Okay, what happens if I drop
And
a quick?
And if God is on your side, he'll lose count and have to start over.
He hisses when you hold objects in front of him that he doesn't like. He eats the same thing for dinner every day. So he's obviously a creature of habit. He won't eat very specific things, like he hates garlic for no reason.
And he routinely stays up all night.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He has poor social skills. He won't go into your house unless you invite him.
Which I know is the typical vampire weakness.
Yes, that's typical. There's the stakes, but stakes through the heart will do that to anyone, so.
It's nothing special, really.
Yeah.
Anyway, I just had to come on and ruin your podcast.
No,
you're
you
fine.
didn't do that.
Well, basically, we're just talking about one of the not so good Dracula adaptations, because at one point, it's trying to be scary because Dracula rips himself out of a wolf.
That wasn't scary. That was disgusting.
Yeah,
and they did that again at the very end of the episode.
Yeah, and he's just standing in front of a nunnery, buck nude. And he's just
and
haunting.
of course, all the nuns are staring at him because he's nude, and most of them have probably never seen a naked man before.
Are you sure you guys are on Netflix, not Pornhub?
I'm not quite sure sometimes.
No, we're on
mix.
Netflix.
The vampire played by Johnny Sins.
No, his name is Clyde Bang.
Wait, if you're going
stage name.
Wait, if we're going to be watching porn, Tony's like, why are you going tonight? God dang, I should have grabbed some lube.
That's what the blood is for.
So.
And there's some dumb stuff, they're very much, kind of taking the original novel. They took, the first bits of the original novel and then kind of added in a nunnery, assault thing.
Well, there was a lot of nudity in the original Dracula. There was just random people that they had they were sucking the blood out of, just random naked people laying around. Like Dracula had a lot of just naked women around his house.
His brides. And apparently in this one, it doesn't matter if you're a man or not, you can still be claimed as a bride of Dracula.
It's very progressive.
God.
What? Isn't Dracula isn't he from like ages when that sort of thing was looked down upon vehemently?
Yes,
that was part of what made him a monster. So Dracula's seductive nature is kind of because I believe it was written during the Victorian times, so his like seductive nature was kind of like, because all these classic monsters are symbolic representations of the destruction of society. So Dracula's was his seductive nature, and he would ruin classy virgin women and whatnot.
Yeah, he's basically sex as bad, or like
he's of the 7 deadly sins. He is lust.
Lust.
I think it's more so that he causes lust than he is lust.
I would concur with that.
All right.
I thought he'd be more gluttony because
Dracula
wolf. I think that's the wolf man more than anything else.
He's also sloth.
The wolf is more wrath.
Yeah. I'm sorry. Did someone say wolf?
Yeah, the werewolf is a combination of. Well, I guess like the zombie would be gluttony, I suppose.
And it makes no sense that Dracula makes revenants instead of more vampires
or ghouls.
Oh, just wait! It's gonna get worse.
Wait,
it does.
Wait, he doesn't create vampires or ghouls. He just creates revenants.
Pretty much, yeah.
Revenants.
Wait, he makes ghosts.
No.
They're basically zombies. They're like semi-intelligent zombies.
Theoretically, they drink blood, but not to any practical degree, and never on screen. That's a huge missed opportunity.
And they also.
So you mean to tell me?
Hey! I'm speaking. Revenant is the catch-all term for all undead that people use. That covers vampires, zombies, and any other undead that they can think of.
This is very important business-wise, Wolf.
Yes.
All right, so let me get this straight. You may tell me they have no problem showing all the nudity you want, but when it comes to a little bit of blood, you just can't show it.
Yes.
They show a good amount of blood.
Isn't that like the opposite of how it normally is? Like you can show all the gore you want, but you can't show boobs.
Well, they don't show boobs. They don't show it. There's no female nudity. There's just buck-ass naked dude.
My type of film.
Wait, what?
Yeah, it's stupid. I mean,
anyway,
if the guy was good looking and ripped, that would be fine. But it's just
part of it's like his chest rug is.
Are you telling me that the monster that's like this supposed to be about seduction is like just a schlubby dude with a rug on his chest?
Yeah, really scrawny.
Who did the casting here?
Don't ask me. I have no idea, and nor do I care.
Were they looking for fuck boys when they were casting Dracula?
Darn, I missed the casting call. But closing thoughts: Dracula 3000 is best Dracula.
And that's this Dracula in space, correct?
Yes.
Let me share my screen to show you.
I'm gonna hop back out here into the lobby.
Alrighty, cool.
Thanks
for having me.
No problem, Brent. No problem, Brent. Nice talking with you.
First off, like this is the guy they got to play Dracula.
How bad could he possibly look good? What?
Yes.
That's actually pretty good, I'd say. A little. That's just my opinion.
He's not bad looking, but at the same time, he's not what you would expect.
Jesus, he could have gotten Henry Cavill to do it. He would have looked fine.
Alrighty. Well,
He looks like a bench would have pressed him.
yeah.
He does not look like what I would expect Dracula to look like.
He looks like he won the most likely to get wedgied award.
He got those he's not the most average student ever.
Oh my god. I expect Dracula to be good looking. But I also expect him to have some build.
There's also the fact that this guy could also possibly have won the most likely to get pants award.
Very likely. Anyway, let's get started with the main topic. We will have a full top discussion about Dracula, kind of comparing and contrasting the BBC Dracula to the
Bram Stoker.
The BBC Dracula to the Bram Stoker Dracula, which is going to be interesting, to say the least, especially with episode 3.
Wait, Christopher Lee played? Wait, Christopher Lee played a Dracula?
Yeah, he's pretty much played Dracula more than any other actor.
Oh my god, why did he have to die?
Christopher Lee is the perfect Dracula. I'm going with Nick Brown.
Yeah, so I haven't seen anything with Christopher Lee as Dracula in it, but you know that Wolf, do you know how old Christopher Lee was when he died?
How old?
94.
Jesus, he could have outlived the King and Queen of England.
I think British people tend to live longer.
Yeah, so he was 80 when he filmed Lord of the Rings.
Also, on discussion of Queen of England, when will you drop dead?
Yeah.
Probably like in 20 years.
Alrighty.
She's nearly 100 years old at this point.
I just don't think she's going to die at all, to be honest.
Yeah. So basically, if we're going to define like what is a horror story, it's basically just a horror story is one that seeks to elicit fear in the audience for entertainment purposes. Some people like it, some people don't.
I'm one of the people who don't.
I'm not a big horror fan myself, but I do like Dead Space.
Never heard of it.
It's a video game series that was butchered by EA. It started off, people really loved the first game. The second game was alright, but the third game everyone disliked because it was the furthest from a horror.
It's like if EA wanted their own Resident Evil 4.
Yeah, they moved there way too fast because first game was not very actiony. It was very slow paced. But you still shot, but your fights were, but it wasn't like bombastic action set pieces. It was just, you be careful. Then it got
Dead Space 3 happened.
So
Dead Space 2 also like advertised itself as being more action based. Is with the advertisements being more well.
And so
Don, what are you doing?
What?
What
are you doing? Said Neph.
What? I don't know.
Neph said, "What are you doing?"
Oh, I'm just like zooming up because I realized that the horror subgenres I created doesn't encompass all of them. So I just said, oh, okay, might as well just show it right here. So basically, like, we're going to be chatting about slasher horror. There's a bunch of horror subgenres, and we're going to cover. I don't know if we'll be able to we'll be able to cover like all of them, but we're going to try to give you at least like a good like explanation of each of these genres. And I made sure to put definitions down just in case. Oh, he's an interesting Dracula. We'll chat about that a little bit later. We might even do that for like Werewolf Month and kind of compare the werewolves in Underworld to the one in Van Helsing. I think that might be interesting.
Thank you, Yokai. That's a pretty accurate description of all three games.
Yeah. And I think the first one we're going to be chatting about is folk horror. Basically, it's just rural setting, themes of isolation, religion, power of nature, potential darkness of rural landscapes. Examples include Witchfinder General, Blood and Saint's Claw, Wicker Man, The Witch, and Midsummer.
You didn't include Children of the Corn?
This is from Wiki. I cut and pasted this from Wikipedia.
I think the third day on HBO that's coming out right now might also qualify as folk horror.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I imagine it would. This is one that I'm not necessarily as familiar with. I guess another example of folk horror could be The Quiet Place, even though it's also alien horror.
Well, that would make sense.
I mean, it could be both, like a folk cosmic type.
That's actually not correct. Richard Roxburgh did not play the Mummy in the Brendan Fraser movies. That was Arnold Vosloo. Arnold Vosloo played Zartan in the G.I. Joe movie. And then Richard Roxburgh, he also played M/Moriarty in the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen movie.
It seems like with folk horror, it mostly got cannibalized by other genres because it's like it lists the power of nature as one of the things that is one of the sources of folk horror. Guess what else uses the power of nature as its primary horror? The Alien franchise.
Yeah. I think like a lot of it is kind of like Wiccan horror. Like this person is scared of, like it's trying to make you scared via like putting you in a naturalistic environment with like cults. Usually it's cults is an example of how to do folk horror or witches or stuff like that.
Yeah, Blair Witch could technically cross into this too. Which again furthers my theory that folk is a cannibalized genre.
Kind of, yeah.
I remember. Okay, I think an example would be Children of the Corn, since it pretty much is everything listed here. Isolation. You're in elves in a in a rural town and somewhere in the middle of America. Religion. The children are extremely religious towards this paganism. I won't say much about the power of nature since he who I forgot what the frick they called it. Since they didn't give him a name, but they gave him like a very long-winded name. But yeah, and it is very much messed up since children pretty much murder anyone who's over 18.
Yeah.
What about The Happening? Would that qualify?
The Happening is a comedy. The Happening is a comedy, not a horror movie.
Plants causing people to kill themselves. What an excellent plot.
Oh.
And you got Mark Wahlberg giving the worst performance of his career.
Oh, good lord.
I don't
How
Mark
bad
Wahlberg
is
even
it?
give good
We're just
performances.
going to stay here and act like we're not going to be like those assholes on TV who see the news and don't do anything. We're not assholes, Jim.
Yeah. But yeah, it's folk. But yeah, I guess like in terms of writing a good folk horror, I imagine a lot of it is kind of like introducing a new person to this community that seems strange. An example of kind of folk horror is The Village, where that kind of breaks this mold is where you're in this what looks like a village from the 1800s, and it eventually turns out that no, it's not. It's actually all a hoax. The horror stuff was a hoax.
Okay, that's just dumb.
Wait, what? That's it? It's like you were hallucinating. Get a life.
No. Basically, what happens is they have all of them have like wear colors. Like they have like a safe color which is yellow and the bad color which is red. And they have the elders keep these people in this village because they want to separate themselves from the world, and they've created this like early 18th century area that's enclosed because they used to be rich, and because of some bad things that happened, they have created a wall and closed themselves into this area, and they use these monster costumes and walk around occasionally to keep people from leaving this enclosed area. And that's the movie ends with a blind girl trying to find a cure by going over the wall, and then she comes back and gets the modern medicine to the guy, but she never sees the outside world. It's really stupid.
Okay, and this okay. I'm just well, that was disappointing.
Kind of think of it, a lot of Lovecraftian stuff could fall into this as well. Like Shadow over Innsmouth is more of a folk horror than a cosmic horror. I'm sorry, but it's not a cosmic horror if you can deal with a shotgun.
Yeah, I would agree. With Shadow over Innsmouth, that is very much with Shadow over Innsmouth, that one is very much a introduction of new person into it, though he does find out, oh crap, I'm of the bloodline of this I've got fish blood in me. I'm going to eventually turn into a fish man. And that's what happens. So he finds out oh, my brother wasn't mad and he's been in this asylum. I'm going to get him out, and then we'll go to Shadow over Innsmouth and we'll live happily ever after as fish people.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like the only remotely traditionally Lovecraftian things about Shadow over Innsmouth is the whole occasional reference to Dagon, and by occasional I do mean occasional. It barely comes up.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of it is kind of just the horror of folk horror comes from the introduction of either you as the audience to an ancient and to kind of 18th century environment, or either it's an old environment or it's a new person coming into an unfamiliar folk environment. Either it's a village that has a lot of problems, or there's some type of thing wrong with the village that usually it's a cult, secret organization, or maybe even the whole town is in on something, like in The Wicker Man. Lovecraftian's kind of in its own genre of horror.
There's only the way it's called Lovecraftian horror.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think that a lot of if you want to write a folk horror, you really want to either have it. Usually, folk horror, if you're writing it in modern time, it doesn't often work. You'd have to make it, because usually it's like a primitive hippie society that apparently has some kind of dark undertone is usually how you write folk horror in the modern time. So a lot of folk horror is either back in time, or it's a modern person encountering a
backward society.
Yeah. So, any other thoughts on folk horror? Yeah.
That's kind of stupid, because there are isolated places that you can go even today where strange stuff happens. Take the suicide forest in Japan. People go in, they don't come out.
That's very freaky still. I don't know why people would go to a forest to do that.
I know. That's why I said that. And there are, let's see, there are still places in the Appalachians, I think.
Usually there's kind of a tinge of the 19th century, 19th and 18th century about the societies. Sometimes it's taking the Amish or Wiccans or pagans and kind of demonizing them in order to make it scary for.
Does anyone hear that noise?
What
The
noise?
crackling, yeah.
Yeah.
That's not me.
That's not me.
Not me.
Oh, you might be hearing me. I'm opening something.
Okay.
But anyway, am I the only one who thinks that maybe it's not a good book idea, but Stephen King should make a demon monster in the forest type thing, after the Japan suicide forest? Or no, that's just me. Stephen King shouldn't make a book like that.
I'd be fine with Stephen King making a book like that. I need to read a lot of Stephen King's more recent work to see, because from what I understand, all of Stephen, even people who like Stephen King, always complain about like the fact that his endings are bad. It's almost a meme at this point. That you have like, and from what I've seen of the miniseries, the only two endings that are good for Stephen King are The Stand, Doctor Sleep, and The Shining.
Have you watched Outsider yet? The Outsider?
No, I have not.
That's a great show, and in my opinion, a great ending.
Okay. Those are kind of the ones that a lot of people hold up. I haven't watched it. I know that like a lot of people hate the ending of it, where it's a giant spider.
I saw that on. I have not watched it, but I saw that clip on YouTube.
Giant spiders. I hate those.
I'm not watching that movie though.
I was just saying that ending just seems so very anticlimactic.
Yeah, where it's basically like for a while you've been this evil clown that can morph into anything related to the fears. He's almost like
and this is why people don't like clowns.
Yeah, it's a boggart, like a boggart from Harry Potter. But then, like at the end, it's just, oh, the true form of this thing is just a mutant alien spider from outer space that just landed in the town of Derry.
That makes complete and total sense.
I never realized that, and yet that makes. I agree. That makes total sense. I never got the Harry Potter connection there.
Don't worry about it too much.
There's other stuff. There's other weird stuff like there's other stuff like the Langoliers, where it's basically just flying meatballs with razor mouths is the ending.
Oh god, that's so dumb.
Literally flying spaghetti monsters.
That sounds hilarious. I want that.
It's a mini series. You can watch it.
No.
What's it called again?
There's a mini series, and they literally look like flying meatballs.
No, I mean, what's the title of the series?
The Langoliers.
The Langoliers. Oh my gosh.
And you also have like
1995. Oh dear.
And you also have stuff like, yeah. You also have, oh, it's different than short story? Okay. I guess I was wrong. But yeah, just looking at that, like, that miniseries, I'm just like, wow, that's weird. You do all this buildup and show basically, like, meatballs with razor mouths.
That sums up most 80s and 90s fantasy, in my opinion. I can't really think of a good TV show that was a horror adaptation back then. Then again, I don't really watch that type of stuff, but still, I can't even think of one.
No, don't worry. I don't usually watch stuff like that either. I'm only watching it because these guys are watching it with me.
Yeah. True. I can't watch it. I watched maybe one horror. Okay, I watched Sleepy Hollow. Not the show, the movie.
Oh, Sleepy Hollow is fun. Like both the show and the movie. Though interestingly enough, like that falls under comedy horror actually, where like the original book is the first example of a great comedy horror story, because Ichabod it doesn't get scary until the end, and before that it's kind of just Ichabod's a dick. And it's kind of like a comedy of errors where he's trying to get with this girl and it doesn't work, and it's not working over and over again. But then, like, it segues into this moment where he gets accosted by the Headless Horseman and disappears after the guy throws his pumpkin head at him. Though in all likelihood, it's probably just Brom Bones screwing with him.
Yeah,
are we talking intentional horror comedy or unintentional horror comedy?
Yes.
I would call what we're watching right now unintentional horror comedy.
No, but like for the classification of this subgenre.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, are we talking Scream or are we talking a Happening?
I would say like something that's kind of like more like Evil Dead 2, from what I understand.
Okay, so it's a horror movie, but it's trying to be funny.
Yeah.
Or Army of Darkness, kind of.
Yeah, Army of Darkness. That's another example. It's like, this is my boomstick.
Batu, Verada, cough. I said it.
Now I have
Yeah,
Go for it.
yeah.
Alex.
Even then, it's like, it's
Wolf, Alex had a question.
Have you ever heard of the show What We Do in the Shadows? Or
Yes,
watched
that
show?
is.
Yes.
I have heard of it. It's Taika Waititi as a vampire with a bunch of other vampires in a flat, and they're just
Well, that's the vampire. That's the movie. I'm talking about the TV show, which is also fantastic.
I have only heard of the movie.
Well, the
Yes,
TV show is fantastic.
I
But
have heard about the show.
I wonder though if that goes under horror comedy. It's definitely a comedy, but there are some horror elements to it. I'd say.
So
when you have a decrepit vampire saying, "I'm trying to do my dark bidding on the internet. Don't bother me."
That's something you definitely see in the show too.
Yeah. But basically, like, I think a lot of like horror comedy is going to be balancing the tone, because if you have a horror comedy, you can very, very easily swing into large amounts of bathos. I imagine that Rian Johnson would not work well in a horror comedy. At least
that probably would not stop him from trying.
Yeah.
I doubt he'd even be interested in it.
Okay, so that was sad.
It doesn't seem like a Rian Johnson type project.
Yeah.
Okay, so Niles says scary movie, Nightmare on Elm Street are fitting to horror comedy.
Yeah, at least like the first scary movie where they're trying to parody movies,
films.
and then they just kind of segue into just the way that all of the movies go, which is just
like
reference after. Yeah, Scream. Yeah, Scream. Okay, that's good. An example. And the Evil Dead series apparently is pretty good, since like it's always Bruce Campbell's always just not always funny, pretty much no matter where he's at, because he's just Bruce the Campbell Chin. Bruce the Chin Campbell. I think like a lot of it is going to be just like making sure that you don't butcher the tone with comedy. You have to like usually the comedy has to be like some measure of dark. You can't like have if you do slapstick in a horror comedy, you're probably going to lose the attention of the audience very quickly, especially if you do it
it's got to be black humor. It's got to very specifically be black humor in order to fit, because it's horror.
Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of.
Well, for example, I was watching one of the Truth or Dare movies. I found them to be very funny than horrifying. But I don't think it was terrifying for at least one bit. I just laughed more at the stupidity of everything.
Yeah. Yeah, I think with that one, that's a so bad it's good movie at that point.
No, I don't think it was good in any sense. I just thought it was like one of the most funniest ones I've ever seen. That was trying to be a horror.
Mm-hmm. And kind of, there's also like just a bunch of like stuff like, and kind of like with the slasher genre, it's mostly just like, that's a really simple one. It's basically just, this is the most common one, where a lot of horror kind of has gone into this particular vein.
Just go around and murder things. That's it.
Yeah, and a lot of
really.
I would say that horror, at least with the slasher one, a lot of it is it's kind of fallen into the trap of, it's basically just a dude killing a bunch of people usually with bladed weapons, like it says up here. But I think a lot of it is you set up a group of people that you want to die, or at least like there are people behaving badly, and the slasher comes in to punish their bad behavior in a lot of ways.
Or they're just acting stupid and dying because they can't think right.
Yeah, which is a big problem of a lot of horror movies where they basically die because they're stupid, and that's a really not engaging character because...
Okay, guys, I have a plan. There's this killer in my house. Let's all split up and widen ourselves apart. That will totally work.
That sounds like a Geico commercial because they literally did those type of commercials for October for Horror Month or whatever.
Or
That doesn't surprise me.
yeah, it's kind of a trope that basically like I think kind of that's why a lot of people like just don't get into slasher movies for the characters. They like the gore or the creative kills. That's the main thing that horror slasher fans like. And I think that part of it, and like it kind of goes back to what Brandon Sanderson talks about, like making an engaging character. They have to have that you can kind of play with these, but usually like high morality, high proactivity, high competence are usually like good ways people engage with people if they have that kind of thing. Like the high levels of those things, but you need to kind of like play with them a little bit. And in slasher movies, it's usually the protagonists have low morals and low competence and low proactivity a lot of the time, because the plot is because the hero usually, because at least like the character that most people come to see in the slasher movie is the slasher, like your Freddys, your Jasons, your Michael Myers, that sort of thing. And you go in there with the intent to, or yeah, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, that's an example, or Jigsaw, where you're looking for the creative kills more than the characters, because usually the characters in slasher movies are not very complex or interesting. They're basically just meatbags waiting to be killed, other than like the
red
one
shirts.
moral person. Yeah, they're the red shirts.
They're a screaming sheep that's being led to the slaughter.
Or once you get late enough into a slasher series, it turns into an unintentional horror comedy like Jason X. Where you find another character's dead body impaled on a giant screw, and they go, he's screwed. Or as the character gets having an airlock and goes, this sucks on so many levels.
Dude, I'd just say, no pun intended, but that's a killer line right there.
Yeah.
Jason X is definitely a guilty pleasure for just how over the top stupid it is. It does not It does not step on the brakes because of fear of being stupid. It goes for it.
I think with like I think that's kind of the main thing. Like slasher movies kind of appeal to a very I wouldn't say niche, but specific audience that like seeing creative kills for, and usually it's like on people that are detestable, like really stupid promiscuous teenagers who are just doing stupid stuff.
I got an idea. Let's go to this haunted house.
Yeah, it's very much just like they are doing stupid things.
And then let's explore on our own instead of using the buddy system.
And those who do use the buddy system have lots of sex.
It's also, while we're also on the topic of sex, let's be really loud about it, not lock the door, or better yet, just get so enthralled in it that we don't even remember that we're supposed to be doing something.
I think
God, so stupid.
I think the kind of something that could be done with the slasher genre is more just like, I think the first Halloween does this, where it's not necessarily like the teenagers aren't acting like completely stupid. It's just that Michael Myers hates people. Is that correct? I haven't seen.
You mean early ones?
Yeah, the first Halloween movie. Yeah. I know some people really hated the most recent Halloween movie.
Rob Zombie ones, or you mean
the one where they brought Jamie Lee Curtis back in as an older Joni, I think.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. The really recent one.
Yeah, the one that came on like 2019, 2018 or something. I didn't see
not
it.
gonna lie, when I first heard that there was a Halloween movie called H2O, I literally thought there were 20 Halloween movies.
Yeah.
It's gonna
There's
be
a
really
lot of
confusing
of
about
these
it.
movies because they're cheap.
They're
really
cheap, stupid, and people shell out money to see them.
Yeah.
That sums it up.
I think a lot of
Basically.
and like they usually like I haven't really seen that many like slasher books. I think part of that is because a lot of like the flair and appeal of it is visual, but I think that if you were to do a slasher book, you would have to very quickly get on side with the characters so you don't want them to die. Or you kind of differentiate from the people who are going to die versus the people who are not going to die. But it's kind of easy to write a slasher story that's kind of typical, so you have to kind of think outside the box in terms of making the characters a lot more interesting. Yeah, a lot more likable and interesting. You can't just like, and usually like if like there's kind of those like rules in a horror movie. If you have sex, you're dead. If you like do drugs, you're dead.
If you go off on your own, you're dead.
Did you say to check out the abandoned basement? You're dead.
Mm-hmm.
That sums it up.
1 second, we just barely got a new guest.
Oh, nice.
Okay, we got a lot of people on. We're gonna have to keep focused.
Hello, you okay?
Hello, you okay?
Hello.
Yes, we can. Give me
All right, good.
Yeah. So a lot of this, so like in terms of like the slasher, it's kind of like you need to have like a good character. If you don't, there is one horror movie that I can think of that kills a child and a baby and a pregnant woman.
The
I think they're
alien one?
referencing.
Yeah,
they're referencing.
Alien versus Predator Requiem.
Oh,
that one does kill a child. Basically, the
one horror
predator
movie
comes
that. Speaking of children, one horror movie that comes to mind that was quite well done for its characters was the movie Orphan.
I've heard of that one.
I think that was more
The
of
Orphanage with Guillermo del Toro.
No, it was just called Orphan.
Wait a minute,
Oh,
I
really?
think I know
Orphan,
what you're
okay.
talking about. Is it that film with that girl who's just really short, but she pretends to be a child, and she has a very weird complex? She tries to get close with her dad, and she tries to murder the wife and kid.
Yeah, and it has a lot of build up. Like, it isn't revealed initially, but she's slowly showing to have strange behavior. And the climax of the film is when the husband doesn't believe the mother when she says she thinks there's something wrong with Esther, which is the child's name. And the main climax is when the Esther sees the mother mourning her biological child's stillbirth, and she would water the child's ashes to have a plant within them. And Esther pretended to ignorantly pull the plant out and give it to her to make her happy, but in reality, it was to make her freak out because she just pulled the flower out and got the child's ashes everywhere. Mm-hmm. So the mother cried and screamed and pulled the flower from her. And then Esther pretended to get her arm broken, and then she actually goes into another, a little carpentry area, and uses the tools to break her own arm to make it look like the mother was being abusive when she pulled the flower from her hand, so the father would believe her. Mm-hmm. It had a lot of calls to action that were pretty good.
Yeah, I remember seeing that film. It's an interesting concept. Well, it was an interesting film.
Well, it was mainly good because of the, you felt for the mother, you felt for the protagonist.
Yeah,
but I wouldn't say it was much of a horror, as it was more of a thriller.
Yeah, kind of like how Silence of the Lambs is more of a thriller than a horror, but there's elements of horror in it.
No, it was a horror. She murdered another kid. She
tried to murder another kid.
Was it? It was a while ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
I'm pretty
I know
sure.
she successfully murdered the father.
Yeah, I do know. I think she did successfully kill the father, but it wasn't. But that's typical in thriller. Killing people, I don't think automatically makes it a horror.
No, it was marketed as a horror movie.
Well, it failed because it felt more like because from the looks of things, it was more like a thriller.
Okay, guys.
House rules, Sammy. Driver picks the music. Shotgun shuts his cake hole.
Yeah, this is petty.
We can get into arguments later, yokai.
Yeah, we can discuss things later, but right now we're trying to keep focused. But kind of right now we're up to gothic horror, which is kind of just a lot of like things relating to gothic horror, romance, dread, and the supernatural. Basically, like it's usually like a romance story within a horror story. Bram Stoker's Dracula fits into this pretty well, though the original novel is less focused on the Mina and Dracula relationship than it is on Mina and Harker's relationship and how Dracula is trying to screw with poor Jonathan Harker in a lot of ways in the original book.
So if Twilight were competent, was this where it would land?
I would say yes.
Impossible. Twilight can never be competent.
You could. Well, Underworld is basically Twilight done competently.
Underworld is Twilight through the lens of the Matrix.
That's actually very fair. That's accurate. But Gothic, I think, like with Gothic horror, a lot of it is with the atmosphere. Very rarely do you have a lot of the Gothic stuff is you have to place it in a different time period. Gothic doesn't really work now very well. Like, at least like if you try to write a Gothic horror in modern day, it's not going to work very well because a lot of it is kind of founded in like Elizabethan era values and such like.
Elizabethan
era, its time period.
What a very weird name for a time period.
Well, it's kind of like, yeah, it's very much like it's like the 1800s or so, the 1800s and the 1900s, where you're very much focused around the kind of most of Gothic horror is set in England or somewhere else in Europe. Like Crimson Peak is a ghost story set in England, though, where this girl wants to be an author and then there's you can't, and then she moves. She gets married to this guy who turns out to be a guy who's been killing him and his sister, who's also his lover. So
they even had a baby, but I think the sister killed the baby.
Or had an abortion. That's also a possibility. I know that for sure they're lovers, and they've been killing women in order to get their money. Yeah, because Crimson Peak is falling apart, and they want to finance their lifestyle. Though this is supposedly like the last big lifestyle because this girl Edith's daddy is rich, but she manages to get herself out because these ghosts, who are all drenched red because they were buried in the salt, around this place called Crimson Peak that is drenched in red. And the only ghost that's white is the guy at the end after he tries to help his wife, but that he's fallen in love with, but his sister kills him by shoving a knife in his face. And he's the last ghost that is seen, where he's this white, milk white statue of a ghost. And a lot of this is kind of related to like kind of either isolation, kind of fear of like, I don't know what's going on, but it's not like, it's mostly just like, unlike cosmic horror, which is basically the universe is so big and expansive and contains things that we as humans can't possibly comprehend. Gothic horror is mostly just like there's stuff about the situation that I don't understand, but they are somewhat explainable either through some kind of magic or science. It's not like a giant Cthulhu monster that drives you mad just by looking at it.
Yeah, sort of Gothic meets you where you are, and Lovecraftian horror looks down at you.
Mm-hmm.
Then, or a dog that, or this giant beast. This is the entire universe, and we're just letting it stream. And the second it wakes up, we just cease to exist.
Yeah, or how we'll get into that with cosmic horror. But essentially, like Gothic, like a lot of like Gothic is like relating to some kind of man's hubris in some ways, like, or some kind of man's flaw. Like Dracula is related to kind of the flaw of lust and gluttony. Ghost stories are usually, at least in Crimson Peak, it's man's greed is the main villain. And you can either have like a couple of ways that you can do Gothic horror where you have the monster is the villain, or even like man is the villain more than the monster. Like with Crimson Peak, the ghosts are not the bad guys. The ghosts are victims who are trying to warn Edith, the protagonist, of the dark inclinations of these two really bad people. Any other thoughts on Gothic horror, kind of just as definition?
No.
It's kind of like the like what the radioactive superhero is to the action genre, Gothic is to horror, and it's largely gonna fall away simply because of like
time and
I'm not gonna say like the advancement of society or progress, but simple relocation. We're not where we used to be.
Pretty much like just the progress of time is going to slowly leave the Gothic horror genre behind.
Yeah, a lot of horror genres seem to be identified by their aesthetics, which is why genres seem to die so quickly. It's like we have torture porn now.
Yeah, which is why a lot of people, why Game of Thrones is actually like characterized as a horror show which is interesting. Even though the book is not necessarily a horror book, but there are.
Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but I have to go now. I don't think I'll be back for the stream, but glad I could attend, and have a nice day, everyone.
See ya.
Yeah, you take care.
Bye.
All right,
Nice
same.
knowing you. And then there were 5.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Gothic horror seems to be very much like urban, folk is rural. Yeah, usually Gothic horror takes place in either a house in the middle of nowhere, or a city. Whereas folk is kind of out in the countryside. Usually it's a village or something where we can't see anybody. And usually you can't go for help. And usually the police are either useless or powerless or don't believe you. That's why in Dracula, they don't go to the police trying to get rid of Dracula. They kind of go off on their own trying to kill him.
Or better yet, the police. Or better yet, it's like you said, everyone could be in on it.
Yeah. Like, I think the police are powerless. Like, The Terminator is a good example of like a techno horror movie. I wish I put that up there now, but the Terminator is very much a movie where it is this technological horror that is unstoppable, that will kill this woman, and is not stoppable by modern means. Or at least
I put that into the slasher genre, honestly.
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah. And then we get into the let's see, why is this being so stupid?
Here we are. Cosmic horror.
Yeah. So I'll just read this out. Lovecraftian horror is a subgenre of horror fiction that emphasizes the cosmic horror of the unknown or unknowable, more than gore or elements of shock, which is what a lot of things do. It's named after H.P. Lovecraft. He emphasizes a philosophy of cosmicism, the idea that the reality underlying the veneer of normality is so alien that seeing it would be harmful, i.e., would drive you mad. Some scholars use Lovecraftian horror and cosmic horror interchangeably. It's characterized as the fear and awe that we feel when confronted by the phenomena beyond our comprehension, whose scope extends beyond the narrow field of human affairs and boasts of cosmic significance, as well as a contemplation of man's place in the vast, comfortless universe revealed by modern science, in which the horror springs from the discovering of appalling truth. A naturalistic fusion of horror and science fiction, which the presumptions about nature and the nature of reality are eroded.
Yeah, technically, by all things considered, in the grand scale of the universe, we really are insignificant.
Yeah,
very, very insignificant.
Like one example of this is Beyond the Mountains of Madness, where it's basically these guys go to the far north to find the origins of humanity, and they find that humanity was basically the cast-off cells of this giant, like, alien creature that drives people mad when they look at it.
Yikes.
Which
you're making me want to play Bloodborne, Don.
Yeah, I've heard Bloodborne is very Lovecraftian.
It is. Yeah. I may not have played the game, but I looked at a lot of the monsters. They do. Some of them are very Lovecraftian.
Anyway, Don, Mountains of Madness, please.
Yeah, but yeah. Oh, go for it, Drake.
No, I was getting back to Mountains of Madness. You were saying stuff before we tangented.
I was just finished. Basically, like, because of this, like, breaking of the understanding of, like, where people came from, where, like, people are originated from these old ones, these kind of, like, gross slug things, as well as looking upon this, like, creature from which all life originated, it drives a lot of the men mad. And a lot of it is related to, a lot of, like, cosmic horror is not in world, like, third person. It's usually epistolary, is how Lovecraftian horror is usually written, because of the fact that with third person, even though you're kind of in the eyes of the person, it's harder to describe from a third person perspective. It's much better when it's episcopal, because episcopal is in the written from the perspective of the person viewing it. And if they can't describe it and they're slowly going mad, you kind of see it within the writing. And very rarely does cosmic horror end well. Usually it's always a bad ending. The only ending that I can think of is the story where the guy is trying to find this city, and he figures out, oh crap, this city was in reality my home that I've been thinking about, my childhood home that I've been dreaming about.
Mm-hmm.
And I invited the old gods there, and somehow he managed just to get Nyarlathotep to get out. And it's kind of the only, like, relatively happy ending of Lovecraft.
A lot of Lovecraftian work tends to be like, we were describing vampires, creatures of lust, slashers, or creatures of wrath, typically. Lovecraftian monsters, they're more monsters of pride. It's because you want to know how things work that you delve into them. And it's sort of an Icarus type thing. It's like, don't feel that you have to know everything, because you aren't equipped to know everything.
If you try to know everything.
When flying too high, your wings might melt.
There's yes, collecting knowledge is good, but who's to say all of it is? But who's to say that you really want to know everything? Yeah, because even if you are capable of surviving through all the knowledge you're going to get, who's to say that all that knowledge is going to be for the benefit of you? For all you know, it may actually affect you worse. You don't exactly walk away from the fact knowing that you're you exactly walk away knowing that you are just a dream. You're not even real.
Yeah, I think that's why Lovecraftian horror has had a huge resurgence as of recently. On top of it just coming out of the public domain, basically, and therefore everybody can use it as a free idea bucket. But it's because we're in a very proud society now, and there's nothing that we have to humble us. We don't have God anymore. We don't have ethics anymore. We don't have religion anymore. What can bring us down?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean,
the universe will bring us down.
I guess I'll bring up Phoenix Point. I don't know much about the game, but and the story's pretty meh. But the world itself's Lovecrafting in nature, and there are 4 endings to that game. One of them is just, well, we deployed this virus. It killed all the mutants, aliens. It killed pretty much everything, and anyone that was affected, and pretty much 90% of everyone that was still living after that great apocalypse just happened. Then there's another ending where it's just, well, through military and might, we managed to dominate everything, and because we did a mother effing nuke on it. The other one is just, well, we control everything.
Mm-hmm.
Another one, it's like, well, we developed something that will allow us to just, I forgot what the closest one is. This ending that's done by essentially neo-anarchist. As well, they're actually more like radical ecologist anarchist. They have the closest to a good ending that doesn't involve massive amounts of destruction, death, or just changing your body to resembling something out of the Eye of Horror.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, Eye of Terror.
Yeah.
Because the one that says let's control these beings are essentially a combination of Zinchius followers, except without the crazy intricate plans that make no sense if you think about them.
Mm-hmm. Which kind of plays into the notion of haunted house. Haunted house / ghost is usually the kind of something in this house is driving the people in it crazy. With the Overlook is and the Haunting of Hill House, both are like you are stuck in a building, or you are stuck throughout your life, where you have to you are stuck in this place and you cannot leave. And this is one that I am interested to watch. The Haunting of Hill House, at least. And I actually kind of plan the schedule of like doing Revenants and Ghost Stories later in the month, so that we have time to watch like one episode a day of The Haunting of Hill House, so that we can chat about it in terms of the context of that particular genre. Because I think it would be interesting to chat about.
Mm-hmm. So you know what this really reminds me of now that you're describing it? Five Nights at Freddy's.
Oh, okay. Please go on. I've heard about that movie, but I don't know what it is. Please go on.
Game. It's probably better not to go on, because it's a story that was basically written as Scott Cawthon went, and it's probably best saved for something more dedicated to it.
Okay, how about I give like a brief...
The lore is complicated.
Okay, I'll give you like a brief 5-minute... Here, let me see if I can condense as much as I can with a concise segment. Okay, without going too deep into any lore. So basically, all the way back in 1987, I want to say, there was this guy who went around murdering kids. There was also this incident where some kid got his head stuck in an animatronic and it bit down on his frontal lobe and it bit it right off. He lived for about maybe a couple hours and then he died. Then there was this guy that was murdering around these kids in this very popular pizzeria place that had like this animatronics. And then this thing comes along, resurrects them, and then next thing you know, they become the animatronics and they
It's crazy. We'll see. Okay.
Yep, I can't do it.
Yeah, one of the hardest parts is how speculative the lore is.
Because there's these very weird events. There's the bite of 83, and then there's the bite of 80. There's the bite of 87. from all things, it looks like Foxy committed the bite of 87, and then Golden Fredbear committed the bite of 83, but they're both very similar events, so it's.
And then the books are introducing my favorite plot tumor of all: time travel. No, I'm not kidding.
It's a very weird mix. There's also the fact that the third game takes place in the year 2030.
The
maybe
Nihilus Nihilum. That's actually a very good point. That Monster House. For those of you who have not seen Monster House, it's a claymation movie where this house seems to be alive, and
I've seen it.
And the creatures, like these three kids see this house and they think, okay, this house needs to be destroyed. And so they had to figure out how to destroy it, and they eventually end up blowing it up because it rips itself free from the ground. And this guy has been in this house, and he's been trying to make people not want to be around him, especially kids, because the house hates kids because he married this lady who was abused and was not terribly sane. And because she was baked into the house, her soul is there, and she still hates kids.
Yeah, all along the old guy was actually trying to help them.
Mm-hmm.
I also saw that movie, so it's nice to see someone to mention it.
Yeah. With The Haunting of Hill House, it's very much the ghosts in this house are slowly driving these kids mad. And there's some interesting twists with that I won't spoil. The ending is kind of if you've watched DFAP, they've talked about how the ending is kind of tismy. But
I haven't seen it, so
never seen it.
Well, I'm glad. Well, I'm
we're
glad
gonna be fresh.
Either am I going to see it, because.
Mm-hmm.
I'm serious. I'm not going to see this. Not even as a watch. I'm not going to see this. Period.
Oh, how come? It's good.
I refuse to believe you.
Why? It's actually good. Even Mahler and Wolf said that The Haunting of Hill House was one of the best shows they'd seen.
Oh, unironically?
Yes.
Interesting. Something good.
Yeah. And technically, The Last Kingdom is Netflix at this point.
Yes, it's after season 2, Netflix has started to produce the seasons. They've been funding the production of these seasons.
Now I'm scared for the
I've seen all of them. It's still very good. It's still very good.
So all the changes that they just fund the production, it's still the same. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yeah. The only thing
all that matters is just bigger budget.
Yeah. The only thing that's kind of rough about The Haunting of Hill House is the last episode. The ending's kind of iffy, but the rest of it's really good horror.
All right.
But in terms of paranormal, you gotta have mostly it's related to ghost stories, and you use ghost stories to the ghost to kind of further the plot. Either the person is kind of a person who sees ghosts, or they are and they're followed around by them, in the case of The Shining, or in Haunting of Hill House, where it's this specific house that keeps drawing them back to the house, or seems to be all of their trauma from their childhood is connected with this house that they were in as kids, that is kind of screwing with their brains. That's kind of anything to add about the haunted house / ghost / paranormal genre.
Well, if you could sit down, I could probably try to condense some more for a half and a half hour. It's only going to take us another hour.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of we don't really have that much to discuss. Natural horror, pretty easy to discuss. Natural horror is just it's usually like related to an animal, like Cujo, Jaws, or Ghost in the Darkness, which is a group where Val Kilmer and another guy are chased by lions.
Anaconda?
Anaconda would count. Same with
Jurassic Park.
Jurassic. I would say Jurassic Park is more like family-friendly action adventure more than it is horror. Because most of it, there's only like a few scary moments in it. With usually like it's related to you're out in the wild or you're in a house alone, where you are like with Cujo. From what I understand, Cujo is very much focused on the horror of your pet turning on you because the pet goes crazy. Same with and kind of another example of this could be a Pet Cemetery, where or at least like Paranormal, where you go bury, like first you bury the cat and it's evil, then when the kid dies you it put it in the pet cemetery, and then the kid becomes a psycho murderer, and then the mom gets buried in the pet cemetery, and she comes back and kills the dad.
Okay. Did someone bring up arachnophobia?
Arachnophobia. Go for it. I've heard of it, but I don't know much about it.
It's essentially a movie where a spider escapes and it comes to this place in America. Goes to some town in America and it starts killing people because its venom is poisonous. Well, it's venom, obviously.
Mm.
And then there's also the fact that it starts multiplying like crazy.
Yeah. And like a lot of it is kind of just like various types of horror. And I'm actually thinking about writing a series of horror books where each book is kind of focused around a different kind of genre, but it's like the same overarching story with the same set of characters, and they're kind of on a more fantastic journey, a fantasy journey, but there's more horror elements than anything else. And I'm thinking about and basically what I'm thinking about is basically discussing that and brainstorming the structure starting next Wednesday with you guys. What do you guys think?
Sure.
Yeah. Well, kind of like it'll be fantasy, but they're kind of going to be like horror elements of it, and we're kind of just going to be like discussing it. Since the main thing is kind of just like figuring out like how to make kind of a more creative fantasy story by adding like layerings of horror to it.
Oh yeah, that's the thing you were talking about before with the stream the creative process.
Yeah, pretty much. But with natural horror, a lot of it is kind of just like you are isolated in a way. You are far from civilization, or civilization cannot help you. Is the main thing about natural horror that you need to keep in mind, because if you are in a place where usually natural horror is an animal of some type, and if the authorities are able to help you with the animal, it generally will fall apart. Because as soon as you get because usually the people there either like cannot kill all of them with the ammunition they have, or they don't have ammunition to kill them. In the case of Cujo,
or eight-legged freaks, that comes to mind.
Yeah,
same idea generally. Interestingly, I would actually not classify Godzilla under this.
No, Godzilla is more
Godzilla's
like
a kaiju.
natural
Kaiju's
disaster.
not horror.
Yeah, yeah,
The
like the
first
original.
Godzilla movie actually was horror.
The 54.
Yeah.
I would classify that into another category, and I'll get to that if we have time at the end of this.
Would that be natural disaster? Would that be natural disaster horror?
No, it's roughly speaking, the idea I had was the horror we make.
Oh,
So
okay,
human
so
intervention.
Okay. And there are like natural disaster horror movies like 2012 and
The Day After Tomorrow.
The Day After Tomorrow, yeah. Both by Mr. Roland Emmerich.
Oh, and it gets even worse. Armageddon.
Oh.
What did Drake say?
Armageddon.
I don't know what that is.
It's,
you don't know what Armageddon is?
It's a
Holy
meteor
crap.
I'm
movie.
joking. I'm
It's a
joking. I
meteor
know
movie.
where Armageddon is. I have never seen it though.
It's the meteor movie with Ben Affleck.
It's the one that was challenged from Deep Impact, essentially.
Yeah, or it's kind of weird. Like,
Question, actually,
go for it.
what genre would you put Independence Day under?
That's so funny you bring that up. I
Alien
wanted to
Invasion.
bring that up. Specifically wanted to bring up Independence Day, and I refrained.
Yeah, you're fine. But I would not classify because nothing really scary happens in Independence Day. Independence Day, like, is kind of just like an alien action adventure movie.
Yeah, but I mean, that kind of thing. Would you put that kind of scenario under cosmic horror, or?
No, because you generally have an idea of what it is.
Well, that's true.
It's a palpable sort of creature. They understand quite a lot of it by the end of the movie.
And usually you don't win by blowing it up.
Well, yeah.
I'm not sure if you can tell how terrifying when a guy flies, when a guy carries a nuke straight up into a UFO's reactor.
Mm-hmm.
True.
And I think that kind of brings us to action horror. Action horror kind of like you can. I think a lot of it is very much just like it's mostly just an action story with horror, with a horror coat of paint in a lot of ways.
But horror motifs, but an action script.
Yeah, like Blade, Van Helsing, Underworld, the Blade movies, the Underworld franchise, and Van Helsing all fall into this category. Van Helsing is not very good. It's pretty bad. But a lot of it is kind of just like it's a mashup of basically they had like what if Dracula was in a movie with the Wolfman and Frankenstein, and then you had Van Helsing as more of an action star played by Hugh Jackman as opposed to an older guy. Yeah.
I remember it being pretty fun. Then again, it was 2004.
It is fun, but it's very stupid. And I think we can watch it for free on Hulu or Netflix.
Also, that movie, the werewolf design, it does still look good.
Yeah, it does. And there's a good transfer. The transformation is good where he's literally like kind of, it's CGI, but it works. Where he's tearing off like his skin and the werewolf kind of emerges out of him.
For a movie that came out in 2004, the CGI has aged well on that.
Yeah. And with Underworld, it's very much a werewolves v vampires, and came out before Twilight, which is interesting, where the focus is around a werewolf vampire war that happens in the shadows. That's usually how it is, where either it's in the past where it's you're against a series of underground vampires like to the side of history, or it's a secret war that humans don't usually play a role in, or
urban fantasy.
Yeah, urban fantasy, yeah. And so you can't really like a lot of it is kind of just like either humans ignore it, humans are bystanders, or there is one human POV character to explain the world to, like in the case of Blade Underworld. With Van Helsing, there isn't really like an audience fill-in character. It's more just like it's an action movie. You're thrown in. Here we go. And usually vampires or werewolves fall into this. Ghosts aren't usually, because those are kind of the most physically imposing of horror monsters. There might be others, but they aren't coming to mind. Do you guys have any other ideas of what other monsters could possibly fit into like an action horror? Like what other monsters could be used?
Aliens.
Yeah, I would say generally you have to go into space for that one, or they come down. Insects.
arachnids.
Oh, no, don't get that into my head.
Pretty good. Okay.
I would also maybe put snakes under this.
Mummies tend to be another one that tend to get added to, like, if there's a horror version of Mount Rushmore, the mummy tends to be on there.
Yeah, like the Mummy movies are an example of like
Zombies.
kind of action horror. Zombies, yes. But yeah, and then you have found footage and teen. Teen kind of falls under slasher in a way because a lot of times with slasher you have it's basically like bunch of dumb kids get together and then the slasher kills them
because they're idiots.
Yeah, generally we've talked about that quite a bit. Found footage is basically just like your fear of claustrophobia. Found footage, you could technically write a found footage book. Dracula is technically a found footage book because from the 1800s where you like have a series of letters all arranged together into a like semi-linear storyline. That's kind of how the Dracula story works, is in terms of that. With other films,
you ever heard of Unfriended?
I have heard of it. It's basically a film mostly from webcams, correct?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
People getting killed over a Skype call.
Which is it good or bad? Because I've heard mixed things.
It's pretty dumb from what I've heard.
I see that stuff. I would put shaky cam under that too, because if it's found footage, then that means that someone took the footage, and they're not gonna have tripods and things like that and stabilizers. So expect not to be able to see anything because of the lighting and because of how much the camera is moving.
Yeah, shaky cam.
I like the concept. I like the concept of people lying to each other's faces and watching them commit to that. It was less about the horror and more about the drama behind watching them lie, because then when the person gets killed, you know they were lying.
Mm-hmm.
So you saw how committed they were to lying. All they had to do was tell the truth. I found that appealing.
Okay, Drake, you had something to say?
I forgot it.
Okay. Yeah, a lot of people like found a lot of reasons why, like a lot of like the thing around why Hollywood keeps making horror movies is because horror movies are cheap. You can really and it's easy to do a horror movie that's cheap, but it's a lot hard. I think it's a lot harder to write like a horror book because you have to very clearly pick your prose and understand exactly like what kind of horror you're kind of going for. Like if you're going for the gore factor, you need to put in like gore. If you have like more suspense, you're going to have to figure out, okay, I'm going to have to withhold information that very carefully from my audience in order to make them scared or make them antsy.
I mean, for example, I had this plan to do a Fire fanfics in the labyrinth of Forneus, which is a location in the Shadows of Valencia and the final act you explore. I had this set place before they go to Thebes, before they follow an expedition into it, and as they steadily descend, the horrors of it comes into realization.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And kind of teen horror, we've talked about that, where it's basically just like bad teenagers get killed.
The subgenre often depicts themes of sex, underage, drinking, and gore. And it's full of popularity, and it only lasted for a year of popularity.
Yeah. Well, kind of like there's a bunch. And then I think that pretty much covers it in terms of like basically defining like our terms, and we'll kind of go into more specifics later on. But this was kind of just a like quick summation of each of them. And now we can open things up to the chat. So it is the chat's time to ask your questions of us.
Just don't expect me to say much because I'm not a fan of horror, which means I don't write horror too. So
I haven't written much horror, but I did write a Dracula book.
Actually,
I was part of a Dracula book.
Actually, could I? Maybe you could call my what was it?
Fur trade?
Yeah, fur trade. Could we call that horror?
You could.
Or suspense.
You could do either.
Okay, so I have written some of it. Okay.
Yeah, mine was definitely horror on purpose.
Yeah. What horror genre would I like gothic and natural horror, I think.
I'm more of a suspense guy.
Mm-hmm.
This actually lets me address that genre I was talking about, the horror we make. Stuff like I brought up Cube before, but nobody had seen it. Essentially, it's one of those movies where the genre is we can only afford to make one set, so we're just going to reuse the shit out of it. And the idea was that everybody's trapped in this giant Rubik's Cube of death, and in each one of these rooms, they have to make sure that they're not walking into a room marked with a prime number, or there's a trap that goes off and kills them. And so they have to get out of there, and basically that. And they don't even know why they're there. There's only like a little scene in there where they actually, all the characters get together and actually discuss what was up. And the idea from somebody who was actually in charge of what's going on is that there is no purpose to the cube. It's not some rich guy being an asshole. It's not the government knocking out like subversive elements of society. It's just they started a project and no one was ever told to stop doing the project, so they just continued on anyway. It's the horror of the gestalt of humanity.
No,
it's together we are assholes. And something of that is the sort of genre I would write in, because of course I would write in, and I'm a huge misanthrope.
No. No, SAO is not horror.
That's not really horrifying. That's more demoralizing.
Yeah.
I just know that at an instance, if you were to drop dead, you die in real life. It's like, damn.
I've always wondered what that looks like from the outside.
Who knows?
I think I really am interested to kind of like dive into kind of various aspects in this upcoming series where it's kind of fantasy horror. We're kind of like taking a lot of like ideas from Lovecraft. I know that at one point I'm going to have like one of the main characters is a werewolf who has shadow powers. Like he can turn shadows into projectiles. I'll have to show you like what I'm thinking. How would I combine? I think a lot of combining horror genres, it would kind of very much depend. A lot of horror kind of blends into each other. But I think like blending like action horror and gothic horror would be the most interesting for me to write.
Yeah, a lot of horror genres are very superficial. And it's like the way they're classified has a lot to do with like their visual appearance rather than anything like theme or tone or anything like that.
Yeah. And it's very much like the aesthetics. where you have like werewolf horror, vampire horror, like zombie horror, that sort of thing. With zombie horror, that one's very basically you don't care about the monster, so you have to get people invested in the heroes. That's why a lot of people enjoyed The Walking Dead initially, but it seems like The Walking Dead is kind of just like gone through a dip in quality now that they've kind of just gone on for a long time with no like end in sight.
And with zombies, you kind of have to be very careful about how you set up the apocalypse if that's how you're going to do it. Because it's already not.
Oh, keep going. I think. Let me actually 1 second. Let me go out to his kind of show. If I were to kind of like experiment, I think it would be hard to mix comedy and cosmic horror, because comedy and like the existential horror doesn't really work well with comedy unless somebody is trying to use humor to kind of deflect from the fact that they are broken in the head. That could be one. I
know
how
Joe Abercrombie likes to use a lot of dark humor.
Yeah.
I'll actually catch myself chuckling through a couple dark scenes.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they're intentional chuckles too.
Yeah, I would agree. But with cosmic horror is usually generally very dour and doesn't have a lot of like levity in it. You have to very careful. You can't really like have like lots of black comedy in there, because black comedy is usually revolving around making light of something ridiculous.
Okay, I was gone for about a few minutes. Did somebody bring up the Abridged series of SAO?
No.
No. It was like I think it's Hellsing was the abridged.
Yeah, they brought up the Abridged series of Hellsing.
I have watched maybe a couple minutes of it. I didn't really like it all that much. It's just I didn't find it a whole lot. I didn't find it very funny.
Yeah, I think natural horror and cosmic horror might be a good juxtaposition, because they're two opposite ends of the scale, and it could just be that this. It could just be that this. Okay.
Found footage you could probably combine with everything if you're careful.
Mm-hmm.
Not so much teen, but found footage.
Yeah, teen horror works intimately well with found footage. Same with slasher.
Found footage action is naturally really easy to do nowadays. Just have a cop's body cam during a zombie apocalypse.
Yeah. I think cosmic and paranormal could work well, because a lot of like, at least like The Shining is very Lovecraftian in terms of its terror, of how it like works horror, because like it's basically this hotel that's slowly driving this guy who's not the best guy slowly insane, at least in the movie.
How was he acting in the book?
In the book, it seems as though he's very much Stephen King's stand-in, and he actually like genuinely likes his family. And at the end of the miniseries, at least, his ghost shows up to his kids' graduation and says, "I love you, son."
Aww.
That doesn't happen in the movie, The Shining. It just kind of ends after like they get away. And Stephen King did not like The Shining movie, and that's why he made the miniseries, was because he wanted something done like more according to his vision. I've seen Nostalgia Critic compare the two. I need to watch the actual Shining in order to kind of like get a better overview of what it's about. Cosmic and found footage could work well together, I think. I'd have to do some experimenting though, because it's hard to do found footage in a book. Because unless you're doing like a series of journals, which I don't like writing in Episcopal style, I feel it's very limiting.
I don't really like it either. I mean, I've tried, but I tried.
What do you think of creepypastas?
Oh, creepypastas.
They're basically the found footage of literature, even as 90% of them are utter shit.
I know a lot of the SCP stuff uses that format.
Yeah, SCP is like 9% of the rest.
I have heard praises for it.
If forced to live in a horror setting, what horror genre would you want to survive in?
Space horror. That way all the monsters are in orbit.
Yeah.
Comedy.
I would kind of pick natural or action, because at least like at least like it's not like something that like a vampire like or gothic, where at least like sometimes it's more the humans that are the bad guys more than the monsters, like in the case of Crimson Peak. Though at least with like vampires, like stuff like Dracula, I could be able to like, okay, this guy has quantifiable weaknesses, unless it was some kind of new monster. But yeah, SP.
If I had to choose,
I can answer some of that. Kind of.
If I had to choose, I would want to be in a psychological horror. That way, I could at least have a chance to sort of tackle some of my inner demons.
Like Silent Hill.
Yeah, pretty much.
I would like to live in a comedy horror.
Yeah. You got a higher chance of dying in a comedy horror, though.
Yeah, I'd stay away from slasher, especially.
Yeah,
because that requires you to
footage.
Yeah, like Blair Witch, like everybody dies. Same with the Blair Witch 2. SCP, I don't know what that means.
Secure, contain, protect.
There, thank you.
You all talked at the same. You all talked at the same time. What is it?
Secure, contain, protect.
Secure, contain, protect.
It's
like strategy.
This universe where this super duper immense government organization categorizes and contains these weird anomalies all over the world.
Oh, so
sometimes they're little things like bread bins, but sometimes they're things like actual locations. Or
have you heard of the Flash game Containment Breach?
No,
I have not. But what I understand is okay. So what you're talking about, stuff like calling all monsters, like the Dreamers movie, where there's a bunch of monsters in Area 51, and they're used to gathered in case of an emergency. Like,
well, this is more specific than that. It's so when you go onto the websites, which sort of function as communities with a lot of extensive editing done to the individual documents involved, what they'll do is they'll have users post documents for self-created creatures that are referred to as SCPs, followed by a number. And essentially the way it works is you just create some kind of freaky monster object, anything really, just anything that's has some kind of strange quality to it. And the way it works is it's taken to these fictional headquarters that all these documents supposedly come from.
For example, there's an anomaly that if you must stare at it no matter what, otherwise it's going to move.
Yeah, I think that's the most famous one. There's also a Plague Doctor.
That's the Weeping Angels from Doctor Who.
Pretty much. Basically. But a little, but basically, and a lot of it stems from the creepiness that's attached to the use of criminals as prisoners to test them out just in case they get killed or lose a limb or something.
Mm-hmm.
They have a lot of fun with that.
Class personnel.
And there are certain documents that are a little more niche that have recurring characters in.
Oh.
Saw.
Yeah, I would put them in slasher like Saw. I imagine that David Benioff's uncontrollable sex fetish for brown women would get him killed really quickly in a slasher film.
Just
yeah.
right. Oh my god, Moby Ball will be like the last one to. He'll be taking the longest to kill because he has so much fat on him. He's his own plant.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I could see him getting skinned.
Yeah, like how what is it? Silence of the Lambs. The guy's skinning women in an articulated female suit because he wanted to transition, but but he can't because like he has psychological problems that would be exasperated. Then so he decides to do it on his own.
So he finds like women that are like, so he finds women that are pretty hefty, and he needs like very specific parts of them. He doesn't like take just a random fat woman. He finds one that's of a very specific certain size or something. Because it's clear that his skin suit is made of like several different types of skin. Like it's clear he went after specific type, like he hunted down specific type of woman. And what he does is that after taking them, he then stars them and then as well has them. As we see with the governor's daughter, he has them oil up their skin, so when he cuts it off, it's gonna come off real clean.
Oh, that would be great! Like most dangerous game.
Yeah, I hate that. I hate that story so much.
The Hunger's Game?
Dangerous Game. Yeah.
Yeah, I read it a couple of times in high school, and the movie The Hunt is basically the most dangerous game. It's like, no, I read the book. I'm not going to watch the damn movie. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. No.
SCP-001, the fact that there are multiples that have to do with the origin of SCP is one of the coolest ideas in SCP fiction. Of them, I refer to Gate Guardian.
I think you could also classify the Hunger Games as kind of, at least the first Hunger Games is kind of horror because of the terrible things that happen within the games. Because you have these horrifying wasps that give you like these like hallucinations. Most of it's like the mutation. What horror genre? Oh,
I have no idea what that is.
Like put everybody on the call in. I think like all of us. What would he put what horror genre would we be in? Like if we could assess, I think Wolf would definitely be in. I think Yokai would like. I think I guess like. Could you clarify a little bit?
I think he means everyone that's present. Which horror genre would we be in?
Yeah, like based on our personality.
Well, that could be taken as two questions. The first interpretation of the question would be if we were all placed within the same story. The second interpretation would be if we were placed in individual stories, what would those settings be based on our individual personalities?
Action horror. Action horror. Action.
Yeah.
Action horror.
Action.
At least it's fun.
Okay, Tom, what would you put me in?
I put you probably in natural horror or teen horror.
Why natural horror?
Because you're a werewolf.
Yeah.
You mean to tell me I'm going to...
Or either natural or comedy horror. Yokai would be gothic. I think that he fits best in gothic horror. I think that's about it. Is there any last thoughts that you guys wanted to bring up before we clock out for the day?
Suspense seems to lend itself to horror really, really easily.
Okay, Nick Brown clarified it was based on personality.
But now do both. Okay, personality. Let me pull it up just so we can keep track. 'Cause there's a lot. I'd probably be an action horror, I think. fun. At least I think so. What do you guys think?
I put you more in gothic horror because you like the fantasy stuff.
Yeah, true. That's also true.
I'm torn, actually. I like fantasy stuff, so... But I also would much rather have my guns with me. So...
Yeah. You have guns in gothic horror. They're just not terribly advanced guns. They're usually Victorian era guns.
I would rather have my Springfield XD series with me.
Just throw me in. Here, I'll take the gothic horror if you make it an isekai, and I get to bring my contender.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess I'd put Wolf in something like The Evil Dead, where it's like kind of comedy horror. That's how I.
I'm with the Dentist Association. Blows the zombie's head off, and you need a cavity.
Yeah. I do think that like it's an interesting comparison between the new Evil Dead movie and the old Evil Dead movie, where like
that's not horror either. Occupation Army,
Berserk, or GG Go.
Gunna Gale Online is what that stands for.
It's more of a mystery with Gun Gale Online, since it's entirely like unraveling a mystery around murder. Okay, Drake would be in action, Neph would be in. So anything to just keep her guns on, that would be it.
Yeah, action or gothic if it was isekai, like Agent Yokai Zero.
Or maybe folk, because think, you got a lot of ammo in the country.
That too.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's about
Everyone
it.
and their mother has a gun in folk.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because it's Sweet Home Alabama.
That's the incest horror.
Yeah.
You're offending me as a person who was born in Mississippi.
Yeah. Alrighty. Let's call it a night. Thank you all for coming. Please pimp your stuff.
Oh yeah, okay. Nihilus, I'm bringing up a good point. You could be in Warhammer Fantasy. You do not know the extent of how far guns are. You don't get anything advanced, but they're pretty effective. The frickin' Skaven have a nuke.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, buddy, what's up?
Hey.
Back just in time for the end. I think.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Oh.
Sorry.
Shame on you, Neph. Oh, Neph is still here. Good. Shame on you for buying Springfield.
They fit in my hand and they're comfortable.
Right. But they contribute to the anti-gun lobby, which is bizarre.
Strange.
Which makes no sense because they make guns.
Exactly.
So, who would you take? What do you mean? Like any? I would. Okay. If I were to take with, who would I take with me? Anyone in any horror genre. I would definitely take Brent Discord because he knows guns. I would also probably take John Wick if I could, because but if I'm taking anybody, I would probably take in like somebody who's very powerfully magical. Like I would take like somebody from Wheel of Time, a channeler from Wheel of Time, just as my backup. But if in any horror genre, like I would honestly hopefully be buddies with Dracula. I would just have like a bomb implanted in his head to make it so that he can't kill me.
Okay. I would choose Isaac Clarke from the Dead Space games and have the genre be an action horror. He's a very good engineer, and he could probably come up with some stuff on the spot. So it would help.
I take Movie Bobsleigh that, that they say about outrunning the lion.
I think that I would go with psychological horror, and I would take Jordan Peterson with me, so I definitely get over it and live.
Points for creativity there, at least.
Me?
Yeah.
I would take Brett Discord with me.
Oh, I feel so loved.
Because then we can pack guns together.
Yeah, 2 people took Brett Discord for guns. I took Movie Bob for bait.
You guys are aware that like Navy SEALs exist, right?
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
why
I
I
can't
said I
name
would.
anyone.
That's why I say John. I would bring John Wick with me.
I guess if it has to be someone you know.
Yeah, I don't know. Jesse, I have not seen Preacher, but apparently, like, I know that like The Boys is like Garth Ennis trying to out Preacher. So.
Other than Brett Discord, I'd probably take Van Helsing from the first Dracula movie we watched. Not Agatha. The.
Oh, if you get to take somebody fictional, Egon Spengler.
I mean, I have 2 choices. I would take Van Helsing from the Incredible Adventures of Van Helsing game, because he could be very fun, because he could at least bring in some dry humor into the situation. And, well, here's my 2 choices. Isaac Clarke from the Dead Space games, and the Incredible Adventures of Van Helsing is Van Helsing.
Yeah.
Weren't we supposed to be on the outro?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, we just got
No,
one last question. We had the question, but yeah, that's kind of going to end it. We're closing it out at 2 hours.
I've got a good answer.
Okay.
I would be in a slasher because then I wouldn't really need anyone because I have a gun and he has a knife. But I would, if I had to take someone with me, I would take Hafthor Bjornsson, the Mountain, because a knife's not going to go through him.
No, it's
gun beats knife. Anytime you brought a knife to a gunfight.
Giant man beats knife too.
Yeah, since he's like 7 foot, like he's like almost 7 feet
6'9",
tall.
450 pounds.
Yeah, he's built like an ox. He's big. But anyway, thank you all for coming. And I have to say one last thing.
Holy shit. Okay, we're going.